Bienvenido a 15 Minutos conmigo, Berta Collado. Welcome to 15 Minutes. We're joined today by Mario Draghi, President of the European Central Bank, Pedro Sanchez, Prime Minister of Spain, Nadia Calvino, Minister of Economy and Business of Spain, as well as Jose Alvarez, a prominent Spanish businessman. Today, we'll be discussing the issue of Spain's economy and how to innovate for long-term growth and the future of work. Before that, let's take a look at the Euro area and Spain's economy as a whole. Mr. Draghi, what are your thoughts on the current state of the Euro area?
Good afternoon, Ms. Collado. I'm ecstatic to be here. To determine the health of an economy, we need to look at the three most important economic indicators: gross domestic product, inflation, and unemployment. In Q4 of 2018, the Euro area posted 0.2% of GDP growth.
Although the economy grew in 2018, it missed initial market expectations of 0.4% growth, meaning it experienced the lowest rate of expansion since 2014. Much of this slow GDP growth can be attributed to trade instabilities.
Furthermore, many of the Euro area countries are facing political instability. With a populist government in Italy, uncertainty over Brexit, as well as a minority government in Spain that can't seem to keep its own parliament in order.
Excuse me, senor, but my government is incredibly stable.
Whatever you say, Prime Minister, however, after Sunday's election, you're facing a hung parliament as well as an insurgent far-right party that's already gained 24 seats in the national parliament.
Moving on, another critical economic indicator is inflation. In March of 2019, inflation was at a rate of 1.4%, wavering from the ECB goal of 2%. Inflation has been decreasing since October of 2018, where it was fluctuating at a rate of 2.2% for the previous 6 months. Now, let's turn toward unemployment. Mr. Draghi, how's the Euro area doing there?
Well, I thought you'd never ask. Amid the economic slowdown, the unemployment rate has been fairly stagnant at around 7.8% in Q1 of 2019. However, unemployment is doing much better than during the 2008 financial crisis. This can be attributed to a robust recovery driven by a strong labor market.
Now, let's focus on Spain, which has been facing its own set of issues. Mr. Sanchez, what does GDP look like there?
Well, between the third quarters of 2017 and 2018, Spain's GDP grew by roughly 2.7%. However, in 2019, the Spanish economy is expected to experience a slowdown with the forecasted growth rate of only 2%.
In Q4 of 2018, GDP growth was 0.7%. Although these figures are relatively stable in comparison to the slowdown of the Euro area, political uncertainty is expected to persist and possibly impact the performance of the economy.
Thank you, Ms. Calvino. Let's move on to inflation. Mr. Alvarez, how's the inflation rate in Spain?
Well, the inflation rate decreased from 2.3% in October of 2018 to 1.3% in March of 2019, far below the ECB's target inflation rate of 2%. These inflation statistics signify that there is a slowdown in the Spanish economy.
Interesting. Spain definitely has lots of room for improvement. But what is unemployment looking like there?
Well, Spain recently posted an unemployment rate of roughly 13.9%. Although this is high relative to the other Euro area countries, this is still a 2.3% drop from the year previous. Much of this drop can be attributed to a decrease in youth unemployment, which is at 32.4%.
Wow. Now, Mr. Sanchez, what do you think is the most pressing economic issue that your country is facing?
Oh, I have to admit that a productivity issue is emerging in the Spanish economy. A lower productivity rate can mean wage growth stagnation for Spanish workers, as well as a GDP growth slowdown.
The poor quality of Spanish education has significantly impacted productivity. The Spanish dropout rate during secondary education is the highest in the Euro area. 1/3 of Spanish children are dropping out of school before graduating high school.
And now, 34% of adults have not acquired upper secondary education, over double the OECD average of 15%. Spain has the second highest unemployment and youth unemployment rates in the EU. Honestly, when I saw Spain's productivity statistics, I wasn't surprised.
It also doesn't help that only 12% of the Spanish youth have signed up for training programs, just showing this lack of interest. Furthermore, 55% of all Spanish children with parents with minimal education didn't even complete their secondary education, showing that in the future, even more Spanish children will not be completing their education. This is extremely detrimental for the Spanish economy, as the up-and-coming workforce will not be gaining the skills necessary for the 21st century.
Yes, after going through a subpar education system and being forced to drop out, 1/3 of youth suffer from wage scarring due to high levels of youth unemployment. This is hurting their future chances for employment and their overall lifetime earnings.
And previous attempts to create job opportunities for the unemployed youth were largely ineffective, channeling them into non-regular jobs with few chances for career progression, which induces high levels of structural unemployment. The problems with the education system need to be reformed immediately in order to preserve the future of work. Additionally, as Minister of Finance, it's become apparent that automation is incredibly important for the Spanish economy.
I completely agree. Manufacturing is a massive portion of the Spanish economy, with Spain's two largest industries of pharmaceuticals and automotives making up almost a fifth of the entire Spanish economy. Furthermore, 18.7% of all Spanish exports come from the automotive industry alone. Hence, these industries would benefit tremendously from a greater level of automation.
Wait, but what would happen to all the people that lose their jobs? I don't want to be replaced by a robot host.
Don't worry. As old industries become automated, new industries will be created that require human thinking and creativity, such as technology. Current workers can be placed into retraining programs to make sure their skills do not go to waste.
This inevitable increase in automation just re-emphasizes that improving the Spanish education system is crucial in ensuring that Spanish workers are not left behind. These improvements will allow Spaniards to become competitive in an increasingly global market.
And because more people are now free to explore more innovative careers rather than just simple manufacturing jobs, new concepts can be developed. Ultimately, productivity is what drives all of this.
Interesting. Automation sounds incredibly important. However, what other areas also need to be fixed?
Entrepreneurship is one of the keys to innovation and the future of work, as it introduces new wealth and technologies and increases efficiency by reallocating old resources. However, due to Spain's high labor taxes and excessive red tape, Spain is ranked 30th in ease of doing business and 34th in entrepreneurship in the world, and in the bottom half for developed nations.
Another major problem is that all 17 regions of Spain have different business regulation, which can dissuade foreign investment. This is one of the major reasons for Spain's relatively low level of foreign direct investment.
For any nation to have long-term growth, their economies must innovate to increase productivity. Mr. Sanchez, how has your government adapted to the rapid proliferation of technology?
Well, I'm happy to report that Spain has started to embrace automation. Thank God, with its working age population expected to decline by 13.5% by 2050. If Spain wants to sustain its current level of output, automating its industries is essential.
And luckily, more than half of Spain's current jobs can be automated, so creating modern sectors that can be automated isn't a concern. Spain has 31 AI firms, making it the fourth strongest AI ecosystem in Europe.
However, we must also account for the downsides of automation. Spain must have a system to assimilate laid-off workers back into the Spanish economy. Adult retraining and VET programs are a prerequisite for any country with high levels of automation in the future.
Wow, there are several pressing concerns stemming from productivity in Spain's economy. But what are some solutions to address this low productivity?
Well, to increase entrepreneurship and investment, Spain's restrictive labor policies and red tape should be repealed. Creating a one-stop shop will make it much easier for businesses to get through the myriad of regulatory hurdles.
Spain's fractured regulatory system throughout its 17 autonomous communities also hampers business investment. Standardization would help improve efficiency plus remove redundancies, thereby saving costs.
Additionally, the Spanish education system must be revamped to improve its human capital and train future workers to elevate Spain in an ever-adapting, skill-biased global economy.
I definitely agree. Looking at VET programs already, only 8% of participants in STEM-related training programs are women. I suggest we encourage more women to enroll in STEM-related training programs by instituting more STEM programs in primary and secondary education, therefore improving the quality and equality of the workforce.
Vocational education is also integral to improving human capital. Germany has a wildly successful dual apprenticeship program where students can go to both small or medium-sized local companies and the education center. Spain should do the same, and at these VET centers, provide an option for an apprenticeship. Businesses are incentivized to partner with these centers because they want highly trained and specialized workers.
Innovation is also important. Right now, green technology is a hot but also pretty cool topic, especially since the Spanish government has recently announced a new proposal of going completely green by 2050. As renewables emerge as the energy source of the future, Spain definitely has a lot to grapple with.
Yes, and Spain has already been working really hard to make sure that green technology is a viable solution. In fact, we recently repealed the 7% sun tax to make sure that solar panels were more accessible.
Indeed, this tax was one major way Spain protected old industries, such as oil and natural gas, from more innovative ones. A key solution is the promotion of green technology, which decreases Spain's dependence on non-renewable energy sources and pushes the country toward new industries.
I completely agree, but how can we promote green technology?
We should follow a tax incentive system similar to the US's incredibly successful investment tax credit or ITC policy. This policy allows Spaniards the opportunity to deduct 30% of the cost of installing a solar energy system from their federal taxes.
Yes, Mr. Alvarez, and in addition to green technology, Spain's R&D budget is just far too low at only 1.2% of GDP, while the OECD average is 2.3%. This is still far from the Europe 2020 goal of 3%. It is extremely important to boost public R&D expenditures as they can have spillover effects on firm innovation.
And the issue isn't tax incentives. The marginal tax subsidy rate for profit-making firms stands at 33%, well above the median OECD rate. The issue here can be easily resolved by attracting more companies, specifically in groundbreaking STEM fields like technology, by increasing overall investment in R&D.
Innovation in technology is the primary way for developed countries to increase their productivity, yet there are still several policies hindering Spain's tech industry from flourishing, most notably the proposed digital sales tax, which entails a 3% tax on the sale of data, intermediation services, as well as advertising. This policy is modeled after the broadly criticized European Commission proposal. It's thus another way that Spain is protecting older industries while harming future innovation.
Wait, what's wrong with the DST? It'll raise an estimated 1.2 billion euros to state coffers on an annual basis and also decrease Madrid's deficit by 1.4% of GDP.
Not exactly, Mr. Sanchez. The European Commission has actually warned that this tax may not be as profitable as anticipated. Furthermore, this tax only applies to companies that have their technological servers within Spain, therefore disincentivizing these companies from coming and investing here.
Well, another interesting problem is that Spaniards work about an hour longer than most Europeans, yet are producing far less than other European nations. A cause for this could be Spain's time zone.
How do time zones have anything to do with Spanish productivity?
Surprisingly a lot. Currently, Spain is in an inappropriate time zone, and the human body follows the sun, while their clocks are an hour ahead of normal times compared to their geographical neighbors. Spaniards are forced to wake up earlier than they have to, and in turn they're going to sleep later as they have relatively later sunsets. That's why I propose changing Spain's time zone to Greenwich Mean Time, which is 1 hour later.
Okay, but how much of a benefit will there be?
It could be quite beneficial, as experts believe this measure would increase the amount of sleep Spaniards get and help boost productivity.
These 6 solutions are bound to yield higher productivity and benefit future workers. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for that presentation. I'm going to start off with 2 questions for you. They're broad questions. The first one is the 7.8% euro area unemployment rate hides low rates in some countries and high rates in others. What can euro area policymakers do to reduce the gap between the countries with high and low unemployment rates?
Mr. Alvarez?
So one of the nations with a higher unemployment rate than the euro area average is Spain. And one of the major reasons for this is that they don't have the same technological companies in Spain as other companies. So this basically means that Spain doesn't have the modern technologies and modern industry that many other countries like Germany has. And so if we were to increase overall, if we were to distribute the benefits of globalization as well as the modernization of the economy to all euro area countries, that would help decrease the unemployment rate in many countries like Spain or Portugal that have on average higher unemployment rates than the euro area.
Ms. Calvino?
In addition, another problem we're seeing throughout Europe is this idea of structural unemployment, where there's a mismatch between the jobs available and the skills that workers are acquiring through their education, which is why a lot of our solutions entail catering these workers into the type of education that will better prepare them for the workforce and for the jobs available.
Thank you. The second question is, if the euro area enters another recession while the interest rates are still close to or below 0, how should policymakers respond?
Mr. Alvarez?
So one of the key ways that policymakers can respond to another recession is through expansionary fiscal policy, which is basically an increase in government spending or a decrease in taxes. Both of these would basically incentivize spending within economies in the euro area, either by funneling more government money into programs like infrastructure, or increasing this disposable income consumers have, and therefore increase overall spending, which is bound to increase GDP growth.
Mr. Draghi?
Although the interest rate is currently at 0, in the past, if the recession is very bad, in the past, the euro area has actually gone to negative interest rates to help spur economic growth. And this is so that the banks don't have an incentive to keep their money in the centralized bank of Europe, so they could impose negative interest rates to help spur economic growth.
Okay, thank you. I have one question about your solutions for productivity in Spain. I like the promoting green technology. It's good for our future of the earth, in addition to being good for the Spanish economy. How large is the traditional energy-making industries in Spain? And if we're increasing green technology, is that going to displace workers in that industry? And is that something that is a worry? Is it big enough to worry about?
Ms. Calvino?
So currently, Spain actually has a flourishing wind industry. So green technology is something that Spain is already addressing. However, what we're promoting is the promotion of green technology in other industries. After all, Spain has an abundance of natural resources that it can capitalize on in order to have these industries flourish. For example, we repealed the solar tax, which was hindering the increase of the solar industry. And so we're really trying to promote other forms of green technology.
Mr. Sanchez?
Furthermore, addressing the second part of your question, we see that yes, when the green technology sector gains more prominence in the Spanish economy, it will displace some traditional energy workers, such as those in coal or natural gas. But overall, we see that Spain has these retraining programs, which means that we can actually take these coal workers or natural gas workers to train them to work in either the solar industry or the wind industry. And even if these workers, some workers will fall through the cracks of the retraining program, we see that Spain has a really strong social safety net that can actually pick up these workers and still allow them to thrive.
Additionally, Spain does not have a lot of natural resources of fossil fuels, and so there is not the jobs for fossil fuels are not a large percentage of the economy. So actually creating these green technologies would, industries within Spain would actually increase the amount of jobs available to these types of energy-related jobs.
So I guess I want to ask a two-part question along the lines of, you've got quite a big agenda you're recommending there, and we're talking about a productivity issue, which is in many respects about a productivity issue where Spain is not on par with its neighbors in the European Union. First, on the changing time zones, Portugal is on Greenwich Mean Time. Have you checked whether Portugal is getting significant benefits from its time zone relative to Spain in terms of its productivity performance? And I guess the second one is, of the ones that you've mentioned up here, which do you think is the most important? And if you could only pick one policy change to emphasize, which would you choose and why?
Mr. Alvarez?
So addressing the first part of your question with time zones, Portugal has always been on Greenwich Mean Time, and because of this, they do on average sleep more than Spaniards, because currently Spaniards have 1 hour less of sleep than the WHO average or the OECD average. This is mainly because they're following their alarm clocks in the morning and the sun at night, and this is forcing them to sleep an hour later than people in Portugal. So if we were to switch over to Greenwich Mean Time with people in Portugal or the UK, their sleep would overall increase, and that's incredibly important since that will also increase productivity in the long run.
Mr. Sanchez?
Furthermore, we see another huge benefit of the time zone solution is that because the UK and Portugal are huge trading partners with Spain, if they had the same business hours and time zone, trade would be a lot easier, and ultimately the export-based economy that Spain has will thrive.
And addressing the second part of your question, I believe that improving human capital is the most essential solution that we have provided, because as you see in the Spanish economy, that this education that they are receiving is not sufficient, and there is this large mismatch, as someone mentioned before, between the education that they are getting and the jobs available. And so if these students are getting the education, then they will be able to pursue these jobs and further bolster the economy.
Yeah, you mentioned almost in passing how Spanish political uncertainty can threaten to damage Spain's economic growth. I'm wondering if you can give us some detail on the specific channels through which political uncertainty affects the economy.
Mr. Draghi?
So right now, there's been a recent parliament election, and 3 years ago, there was this right party called the Vox Party that only had 47,000 votes, and right now they got 2.6 million votes. So in parliament, they went from 0 to 24 seats. And this political instability references this bigger idea of Euroscepticism, which creates the problem of foreign direct investment. And this lack of foreign direct investment is why there is not much economic growth.
Ms. Calvino?
In addition, to cite a specific example of political uncertainty, in 2017, we saw the Catalonian independence referendum, which had immense impacts on the Spanish economy. For example, Madrid had to pay higher interest rates on its 10-year bonds, or offer higher interest rates on its 10-year bonds in order to incentivize investment, and we could see this greatly cripple economic growth in the future. However, every time such instances of political uncertainty have surfaced in Spain, we've seen that the Spanish government has been able to address it, which is really a testament to the political will of the government to keep Spain unified.
Mr. Alvarez?
In addition to what Mr. Draghi said, the Vox Party is a Eurosceptic party and wishes to remove Spain from the European Union. Although they don't have a lot of power right now, there is a possibility, as there are new elections in May as well for regional parliaments. So if we see an increase in the number of Vox members in parliament in both regional and national levels, they could try and trigger Article 50 and remove Spain from the European Union and drastically increase the barriers of trade with their major trading partners, which could be deleterious to the Spanish economy.
So we have 30 seconds for a very rapid question and a very rapid answer. So all this reform cost a lot of money. Are you suggesting that the Spanish fiscal deficit should be permanently higher?
Ms. Calvino?
So to not invest in these proposals would be fiscally irresponsible. So currently, many of Spain's economic indicators suggest a healthy economy. However, problems such as high unemployment rates, specifically youth unemployment, in addition to the depletion of the workforce, could cripple the nation in the long run if they don't capitalize on the fiscal space they have available to address such issues. After all, they have a healthy budget deficit and healthy debt to GDP ratio. In addition, all of these solutions are going to either create jobs or increase productivity and therefore boost the economy. And as a result, will actually be net revenue positive in either the short, intermediate, or long run.
Okay, thank you. We have run out of time. Thanks for the Spanish authorities to come to the presentation.